It seemed harmless enough. Charles Williams was asked to speak to the local Cub Scout pack about his experiences as a young cowboy, a ranch hand out in Texas. Now, the boys, they were learning how to tie knots, and Williams, also being a retired school teacher, felt like he could teach them maybe how to tie a lariat or make other knots that they may find useful that he used on the farm. Now, his speech started out well. He seemed to be adapting to his young audience, but for some reason, Williams also thought that the boys might also enjoy learning a little bit about how to exterminate the screwworm. Now, a screwworm is a pesky parasite commonly found in cattle. So in the middle of his talk about roping cattle, he launched into a presentation about the techniques for sterilizing male screwworms. Now, the parents that were there, they fidgeted in their seats. The 7 and 8-year-olds, they didn't have the foggiest idea what a screwworm was, what sterilization was, much less how male and female screwworms mated. It got worse. Williams then moved into talking about castrating cattle. So 25 minutes later, he finally finished this screwworm cattle castration speech. The parents were relieved, and fortunately the boys had not understood a single thing he had said. Williams' downfall resulted from his failure to analyze his audience. Now, he may have had a clear goal in mind in the beginning, not tying in Cub Scouts, but he certainly didn't take into account their age, their levels of knowledge, their background of his audience when he talked about the other things. So we know that audience analysis is essential to the success of any speech. So when you think about your audience, you can't think about us as some undifferentiated mass just sitting there waiting breathlessly to hear whatever you've got to say. You've got to think about us as a group of individuals. Individuals that have their own separate knowledge and experience about various topics. So basically, public speaking is the process of speaking to a group of individuals and learning how to adapt your message to those individuals so they will best receive it. So, what is audience analysis? Okay, well, audience analysis is the process of examining information about the people who will hear your speech. Pretty simple concept. And like I said, you take what you learn about your audience and then you adapt your message to them. So let's take Mike, for example. Mike spent a glorious spring break at Daytona Beach, Florida. Now, when he got back from his trip, sunburned, fatigued and tired from a whole week of partying, different people asked him how his trip went. He told one of his fraternity brothers that it was great. We slept on the beach all day, we partied all night. He told his mother that it was good to relax after the hectic pace of college. He told one of his professors that it was mentally invigorating to have time to think things out. Well, you can see in each one of these statements, although he had the same topic, how he changed his message based on who his audience was. Now, there's several key questions that we need to ask as we start to formulate an approach to our audience. So here's some things that you've got to think about when you start your audience analysis. First, to whom am I speaking? Meaning, what group are they a part of? What does my audience expect from me? What topic would be most suitable for that audience? What is my objective as the speaker, meaning based on who that audience is, how do I accomplish what I want to accomplish? What kind of information should I share with that audience? How I should present that information to them? What's going to gain and hold their attention? What kind of examples are going to work best? And then possibly what method of organizing the speech is going to work best as well. Now, being audience-centered does not mean that we tell the audience just what we think they want to hear. No. It's learning about that audience and adapting our message, whatever that message is, to them. Now, we're going to take a look at ways to analyze and adapt to your audience before, during, and after the speech. So let's look at audience analysis before you speak first. Now, there's 3 basic dimensions of audience analysis before you speak. There's demographic analysis, there's attitudinal analysis, and then there's environmental analysis. Let's take a look at demographic analysis first. Demographics, these are going to involve things like population data. These are character traits like age, gender, education, religion, things you might find in, population or census data, for example. And we know that each one of these things can have an effect on the topic we choose and the approach that we take with the speech. It also may impact the language we use, the support material that we cite within the speech as well. Now, the second area being attitudinal analysis, a little bit more difficult than demographics in terms of identifying. When we talk about attitudinal analysis, this explores the audience's attitude towards the topic, the purpose, us as the speaker. We look at the underlying beliefs and values that might affect these attitudes. So it's important for us to differentiate between attitudes, beliefs, and values first. So first of all, what's an attitude? Basically, an attitude reflects our likes and our dislikes. So you say, do you like health food, or are you for or against capital punishment? Well, your answer would reflect your attitude towards those things. A belief is what we hold to be true or false. So why do you like health food? Well, you may believe that natural products are better for you. Why are you against capital punishment? Well, you may believe that it is wrong to kill people for any reason. A belief explains your attitude. Now, values, these are our enduring, lasting concepts of good and bad, or right and wrong. And you're going to find that a value is more deeply ingrained in the way that you think than attitudes and beliefs ever could be. So, for example, we say you like health food because you believe natural products are more helpful, but you value good health. You are against capital punishment because you believe it is wrong to kill people and you value human life. Now, as we analyze the audience's attitudes, we have to look at it in two different areas. We have to take a look at those attitudes towards our topic and those attitudes towards us as the speaker. So when we attempt to analyze the audience, we've got to categorize them really into three different groups. First, we need to understand if they are interested or disinterested. So it helps to know going into the speech, do they want to hear what you're going to talk about, or could they care less? So if they're interested, you just have to keep them on board and maintain that interest. If they're disinterested, you're going to have to really develop that attention getter, really create a tie to the audience to show them that your topic concerns them in order to draw them in. The second thing we need to think about is, are they favorable or unfavorable? Meaning it helps to know in advance, are they in a position to agree with what you're going to talk about, or do they disagree with what you're going to talk about? The approach could be very different with either group. And then lastly, we need to know, are they captive or voluntary? Is the audience there because they want to hear what you have to say, or are they there because they have to be there? And that could create some tension if they're in a situation that they don't want to be in. Now, we also need to understand that not only do we understand their attitude towards a topic, their attitude towards us as a speaker can have an impact as well. So regardless of how they feel about your topic or the purpose of your speech, if they regard you as a credible speaker, then they're more likely to listen. So it may be a situation where there's somebody that holds a position of authority, maybe it's a respected position of authority. You may not agree with their stand on an issue, but you want to hear what they had to say because you respect the position and you feel like they at least still know what they're talking about. So if you can build your credibility and have the audience kind of on your side, then they're more likely to listen no matter what they think about your topic. Now, we've taken a look at demographic analysis, attitudinal analysis. The third dimension of this audience analysis before we speak is environmental analysis. Now, the reason this third area is important to focus on is it's because of it's one of the three before we speak analyses that we can do something about. So in this situation, we've got to think about how many people will be there. We need to understand things like, will they be seated or will they be standing up? What's the room going to look like that you're going to be speaking in? Do you have all the equipment that you need in order to show, say, a PowerPoint? Maybe it's a large auditorium and you plan to use a poster. You've got to adapt your visual support so that everybody can see it. Do you need a microphone because you're quiet? Or again, the room is big. So we can do, we do this environmental analysis so that way we can make accommodations and we can adapt and change things to make it work out better for us. Now, once we've done this pre-speech analysis, the next area is we have to do audience analysis as we speak. So this is basically adapting to the audience as we deliver our message to them. Usually once the speech is started, we've got to rely on nonverbal cues from the audience to read their feedback, see how they're responding to us, and then we adapt to it. So what do we look for? Number one, we look for eye contact. Eye contact is probably the best way to determine whether or not your audience is maintaining interest in your speech. Second, we take a look at facial expressions. The face can give us a lot of information. Are they smiling? Are they frowning? Or do they have just a numb, stoic look in terms of being non-responsive to anything that you're saying? Pick up on restless movement. We find that an attentive audience tends to remain fairly still and quiet. Now, a sleeping audience does the same thing too. But if you start to pick up on kind of mumbling in the background, paper shuffling, people shifting in their seats, that could tell you that they're losing interest in what you're talking about. And then we also read their verbal responsiveness as well, meaning do they respond when you ask a question? You listen for things like raising hands if you ask another question, or do they kind of lean over and just mumble to the person to them? How do they react directly to you when you engage them directly? Now, let's say that we pick up from our audience and realize that we're losing their attention. What are some things that we can do to recapture that attention during the speech? Well, here's just a few things that you can build into your speech. One, tell a story. An illustration almost always guarantees audience attention. So if you can build good illustrations and stories into the speech, everybody likes to hear a story. Remind your audience why your topic is important to them. Now, in order to remind them, you will have had to have established that in the introduction in terms of establishing listening motivation. But if you somewhere in the speech, maybe from one transition to another one, you say, okay, at the beginning of the speech, I told you how you were going to save money on your tuition next year. Well, the final way I want to talk about is the most important one. Use appropriate humor. Humor can work well if it's funny. That's kind of like the first thing. I can have seen speeches that have come to a grinding halt where people tried to be funny and it either wasn't or it wasn't appropriate. So if you can build humor into the speech where it's appropriate and it works, that could get the attention of your audience. Ask for a direct response from your audience. So this is where we directly engage them and we have them do something like raise a hand, answer a question, maybe it's perform some kind of activity, but you draw them in and they actually participate with you. Another thing you can do is you can pause for dramatic effect. A well-placed pause can create suspense, drama, anticipation, and so that we place that very quick moment of silence is enough to kind of snap somebody out of whatever daydream they may be in and draw them back to you. And then really any kind of change in vocal delivery, change in rate, volume, pitch, rise and fall in the voice, all of those things can get the interest of your audience. Now we've taken a look at audience analysis before we speak. We've looked at audience analysis as we speak. The last area we need to take a look at is audience analysis after we speak. And you may ask yourself, why is this even important? I'm not talking to them anymore. I'm done. Well, you got to remember that your audience is going to long remember the effect of your speech after the speech is over. And even if you're maybe doing a speech trying to persuade us to vote for a candidate or buy a product, if you leave us with a very negative impression in the end, well, we're not going to buy that product or vote for that candidate. So how do we assess the audience once the speech is over? First, we pay attention to the nonverbal responses, the biggest of which is applause. You can read a lot from the applause you get at the end of a speech. Is it robust and enthusiastic, or is it quiet, golf tournament clapping, like they just felt bad and there needed to be some kind of sound there? We listen to their verbal responses. What do people actually say to you once the speech is over? Do they say anything to you at all? Do they avoid eye contact and leave the room? Or do you get a lot of questions about one particular area that could tell you they were really interested in that area, or maybe they didn't really understand that part of the speech? You can formalize this and gather survey responses, and this is where we actually pass out a questionnaire and ask them directly, what did you like most? What did you like least? Was there anything you didn't understand? Would you listen to this speaker again? And then lastly, Behavioral responses. Did they sign the petition? Did they join the group? Did they donate money? Did they vote for that candidate? Did they buy the product? Usually you can find that your listeners' actions are the best indicators of your speaking success.